I'm not saying this should be we have county attorney that yeah, we can.
Yep, that works for you. I'm gonna wait till they're done. Good afternoon. Oh, nope, it's morning. Good morning. Feels like a long day already. This is 10:02 on Thursday, April 15th, 2021. We're going to start today's meeting with an action item for Lakeshore Development. The board will be considering the findings of fact and conclusions of law for a comprehensive plan map amendment, the resolution for that amendment, the rezone FCOs, a development agreement for that rezone, and then an ordinance directing the change to the official map. The case numbers for those are OR 2020-0010 and RZ 2019-0039. And for the record, I am Commissioner Smith. Also present is Commissioner White and Commissioner Van Beek. And Monica Reeves is our deputy clerk today. And I have Jennifer Alameda, our development services planner for this case, right? I did have a chance to review those. They look good and in accordance with what we had requested. So if there isn't any additional questions, or if there are, we can ask them. But I would be ready for a motion.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Van Beek.
Regarding the Lakeshore Drive development, I move that we sign the comprehensive plan map amendment COs in case number OR 2020-0010. You want this one at a time?
Sure. Do you want to do it all in one motion? I think one motion is good too.
And the resolution for the comprehensive plan map amendment, additional rezone FCOs case number RZ 2019-0039, and the development agreement accompanying that in case number RZ 2019-0039, and the ordinance for conditional rezone directing the change to the official zoning map as presented.
Second. There's a motion and a second on the floor to approve all as was mentioned. And any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Okay, so that completes that action item. Do you need these signed right now, or can we sign them later and then get them to you? Okay, I'm going to put them to the side so we can keep going. Thank you. All right. Monica. Oh, do we have people online? I'll log on too.
Candace Hammond, Jennifer Buskirk, Joe Jones, Cassie Chadwick.
All right. So I'm going to do a little summary for what to expect today and basic housekeeping. So this hearing is being conducted both in person and using WebEx. Everyone on WebEx has been muted and will be unmuted when it is time for them to speak. The staff report and any additional exhibits have been posted on the county website on the land use hearings page. You may wish to open those documents if you haven't already done so. I am the chairman today, and I will maintain order by restricting inappropriate discussion or disorderly conduct. So So today's hearing is, per Idaho statute, when the Planning and Zoning Commission makes a recommendation and the Board of County Commissioners changes that recommendation, that causes a second hearing to happen. So what that means is it's a brand new hearing today. So we will still consider everything that was presented prior to today, but we'll also accept new evidence. We want you to know that we did hear you, and we would ask, in the effort to save time, that if you still feel very passionate about something, instead of belaboring it so that we don't have repetitive testimony, just indicate in a way that you still have the same concerns from the prior hearing. I know that we have all reviewed those in a lot of detail recently, and so we hear that, but you're still welcome. You will be offered time to speak today. And so testimony guidelines. I will take a short time to explain these per the Canyon County Code of Ordinances 0705. For those of you that are joining us on WebEx, please indicate with the raise hand icon at the bottom left corner of the screen if you would like to testify today. In an effort to, again, save time, I'm only going to call on those that have the raise hand icon. If you're not sure how to do that, please use the chat feature to contact Monica, who will help you. The applicant who requested the hearing or the representative will testify first, since the applicant has the burden of proof. Testimony will then be given from those in favor of the applicant, followed by the witnesses who have signed to testify as neutral, and then those in opposition. The person making the request or the representative will be allowed 10 minutes for their presentation. If a spokesperson for the opposition has been designated, they will also be given 10 minutes for their presentation. The board may make exceptions for unique and unusual circumstances and complex issues. All other individuals testifying will be allowed 3 minutes of non-repetitive testimony. When testimony in opposition is concluded, the applicant will be permitted 5 minutes for rebuttal testimony if necessary. If you refer to an exhibit or computer projection today, please use specific verbal descriptions such as an exhibit number, location, or direction so that a transcript can be made for review if necessary. At this time, I will read all of the attendees listed in WebEx, and I will need you to specify if you are in favor, neutral, or in opposition. Candace Cameron?
Yes.
In favor, opposition, or neutral?
Position?
Opposition. And do you wish to testify?
Yes.
Okay. Are you writing it down? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I have Jennifer Buskirk.
Yes.
In favor, in opposition, or in neutral?
In opposition.
And yes, you want to testify, right?
I have shown there with my statement.
You've already provided a statement? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Joe
you.
Jones?
In favor, and no, don't need extra testimony to add.
In favor and no testimony. Cassie Chadwick?
Opposed in testimony.
Thank you. All right. Then from our in-person on our sign-up sheet, in favor of this request will be Justin Parker, and that have indicated they'd like to testify. Justin Parker, Lowell Fritz, Matt Wilkie, and Alan Mills. From the opposition sheet, testifying Ryan Whittaker, Joyce Greenfield, Christy Phelan, Eric Phelan, maybe Fallon, I'm not sure, you'll have to help me. Richard Given, sorry about that, Teresa DeMaro, Jake Fillmore, Lynn Whittaker, Marnie Fillmore, and Sandra Kirshner.
Oh, Christy Holmes just joined.
I have a Christy Holmes that joined on WebEx. Christy, would you like to testify today? Are you there, Christy? All right, we'll just put her back on mute. And if you decide to testify today, please send a chat message to through the WebEx feature. So at this time, I will ask Monica to administer the oath or affirmation to staff and those who wish to offer testimony today. So that includes everyone online and then those that I listed off, if you'll raise your right hand.
And Dan Lister.
And Tricia.
Swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help you God?
Thank you. Okay. Before we begin taking testimony, is there any member of the board who, for reasons of conflict of interest, requests to be excused from participating in this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair, no.
No.
I'm a no as well. Are there any declarations pertaining to this request of meetings, such as site reviews or conversations outside of the hearing?
Madam Chair, the only thing I have to disclose is that there is an employee that works with my husband who's located in proximity to express concerns on this event.
No.
Okay. I will state for the record again, I do live in the media area. I drive by this site often, and I'm very familiar with it. Since the last hearing, I have not spoke to anyone about this case, and I think that I can make a impartial decision. So, okay. With that, we will now begin taking evidence by calling upon Development Services staff to present the staff summary and any late exhibits.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and Dan Lister, planner for Union County Development Services. As kind of stated already, on March 15th, this came before the Board of County Commissioners request for a rezone. The board found that the item could come back as a conditional rezone with development agreement, subject to some changes to the conditions within that development agreement related to setbacks, noise management, landscape buffers. So staff has provided the commissioner revised SEOs identifying those changes as well as a revised development agreement. So as stated, shown on the screen, the changes were about 19, a total of 19 uses that would be prohibited. As shown on item 2A, this includes truck terminal, mineral extraction, batch plants, bulk storage of flammable liquids, mortuaries, crematoriums, and funeral homes, banks, hotels, and restaurants, vehicle sales lots, rendering plant, ethanol plant, impound yard, fertilizer processing plant, salvage goods, kennel, mini storage and RV storage, mobile and manufacturing home sales, rehabilitation of manufactured homes, slaughterhouses, and vehicle fueling stations and convenience stores. So those would be prohibited. And as a condition 2B was that food processing facilities could be allowed subject to a conditional use permit. The other additions are 2C1 or 2CI. And that is the setbacks. The board requested that there be a structural setback of 100 feet from the perimeter, the east, south, north, and west property boundary lines. The staff has added that. Noise management, they would have to have a noise management plan that indicates hours of operation, how they're going to deal with noise generating equipment, and how they're minimizing outdoor operations to not exceed 65 decibels between the hours of 7 p.m. and 6 a.m. The other changes are the landscaping buffer. So there's a 30-foot landscaping buffer that has been added that would be along the perimeter of the property This would consist of trees, bushes, and other native plants within this buffer. So they would have to provide a plan showing demonstrating how they're going to do that. They also show how they're going to have to maintain it, be weed-free, and not become a public nuisance. With that, those are the changes requested by the board. This was provided on our website and to the applicant for review. Staff did not receive any indication whether or not the applicant would be opposed or accept these conditions. One of the additional things the applicant asked for was that there's a termination clause if there was any abutting similar uses that the development agreement would go away. Staff is not recommending that, and we did not add that to the development agreement. This should come back through a modification at the time if they wish to modify that agreement. It should be terminated based on clause. Comments received regarding this, we received 8 letters of opposition. Basically, they still find this to be the neighbors still find this to be very impactful with conditions. This is just, they feel that this is just not an appropriate use at this time. It does have a potential impact, as stated before, regarding traffic, noise, just property values, and just the enjoyment of the area. So with the conditions, they still feel that this is still a very impactful use. We did receive Exhibit 44 from Matt Wilkie. It's just an article from the Idaho Press regarding issues with Caldwell and Napa finding in the industrial land supplies for industrial uses and finding mechanisms to find that use that would provide adequate services for industrial uses and promote that. So it does have some good points in there regarding the need for industrial uses within the city. With that, with all the new information, staff has provided again the revised FCO that supports the development agreement as conditioned, as revised by the board, and that concludes staff's presentation. One addition, this staff's PowerPoint presentation, I would like to make that exhibit. I would like to make that exhibit 45.
Okay. Will you please cover the options, since this is a brand new hearing? Not staff, but the board has the option to make any decision today, and the applicant still has the burden of proof for approval today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so the options before you today is to accept the conditional rezone as modified, or can be further modified by the board today if they wish, or deny it, find it to not be acceptable, and direct staff to come back with revised findings for that denial, or continue it if you do have further information that you need to.
Okay. Commissioner Van Beek?
Madam Chair, pardon me, do we need a motion to accept the
Yep, I'm going to be right there. Do we have any questions for staff though yet? No, you're good? So, actually, I don't need a motion. I only need, if there's any opposition or any dissent of adding them to the record, and then we'll just note for the record that they're accepted.
I'm in favor of accepting.
Accept them.
Okay, so let the record show that we accept the late exhibit. And if there's no other questions of staff, we're going to jump right into testimony. Matt, are you still the representative?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you are up first. You will have 10 minutes of testimony today. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good morning, my name is Matt Wilkie, PO Box 7, Middleton, Idaho. As far as late exhibits, I was gonna enter a soil map. Is that too late to enter a soils map?
Do that.
Okay. Made extra copies, and then I'll give
Is the soil map different from what staff has?
it's probably similar. It's off the USDA website, mapping website. This has some good points in there to help testimony.
Okay, Did you bring copies for us?
I brought copies for everybody. I have extra copies of that newspaper article too, so I'd like to see that.
We have that.
Just need 3 copies here.
Bring in one for me. The article was already provided to the board.
Okay. Well, now, this is the breakdown of the application.
Thank you.
And then this is the breakdown of the classification.
This will be exhibit 46.
45.
40, you're,
Oh, yeah, you're right, 46. Yeah.
okay.
Well, good morning, board members and citizens of the great state of Idaho. I'd like to start by showing my appreciation to have everybody here and really looking forward to working with you guys on this project. We've gone over a lot of testimony in the past 2 hearings. I hate to just go through all that again and reiterate. I don't know if I need to, but just quick, brief summaries. We felt this way, our applicants picked this location based on the close proximity to industrial and the future land use map showing industrial. So I wanted to reiterate those points. And we feel it's a great location. And as letters from Tina Wilson stated regarding wage generation and creation for Canyon County, and many letters of support we've received to people in industry, that we think it's just a fantastic location and a great project that would benefit Canyon County greatly in the future.
Hold that closer to you so everyone can hear you well.
Yep. And so as far as that, I could go over a couple of things. I wanted to reiterate our letter from Western Farms, who's a large farmer in the state of Idaho, especially the Treasure Valley. They also operate in Nevada and Oregon. He is in support of our rezone, and as a background for a multi-generational farmer in Treasure Valley, he has great insight on the type of farm use and capability of that property. Also, our great mayor, Steve Riol in Middleton, also submitted a letter of support, and I want to make sure everybody has seen that and how he's very much in support as the next county commissioner. Wanted everybody to know that, they're dying for industry in Middleton, and he said that if we can't get the rezone here, he'd like to have the business in Middleton. So that being said, as we move forward, I wanted to state, do you remember getting this exhibit, Dan, last time?
Yeah, I'll put it up.
Okay, thank you, Dan. We are lacking industrial property in Canyon County to purchase. We're having businesses turn away. We've had testimony last hearing from a real estate agent in Nampa that spoke to that exact point. After our hearing, we had an article in the newspaper in the Press Tribune that came out March 16th, and it stated our point exactly. It's called the squeeze on industrial land supply. I believe that was exhibit 44. We're just dying here for property, and we're losing business because of it. One of the main reasons is on my exhibit 35 up there. It shows that pretty much Simplot controls almost all of our industrial ground in the area. And and then we have a lot of gravel extraction companies and, large land use, large users that property is never going to come up for sale. So we're down to very few sites, like this one that we picked up, this 42-acre site on corner of East and Lower Pleasant. It's a very rare property to find, especially in the future land use map zoning and industrial. My late exhibits are soil maps, and that I just pulled that off the USDA this morning. That soil map shows that 85% of that property has class 3 and class 6 soils, mostly class 6. Class 6 soils on the custom, on the description of what a class 6 soil is they have severe limitations to make them generally unsuitable for cultivation and that restrict their use mainly to pasture, rangeland, forest land, or wildlife habitat. Class 3 soils have severe limitations that produce the choice of plants or require special conservation practices for both. That property that was picked follows well with the industrial rezone, and the future land use map made a perfect line almost where the bad soils are. Everything south of Lower Pleasant has a lot better soil, and the staff exhibit shows. So I've seen some letters from concerned neighbors and how they say that, I haven't been factual or I don't have facts, but I do have facts. All my testimony is based on facts. The soils are not that great for farming. And that being said, I'd like to move forward and talk about the development agreement. Number one, our applicants would like to state prior to any industrial use allowed on site, L&J Investments Idaho would like to have the ability to revert back to ag zoning at the applicant's choice, so that the applicant does not have to follow the stipulations in the development agreement if they are not able to attract any industrial users due to the restrictions in the development agreement. We're seeing there's quite a few restrictions on this development agreement, and it's not suitable for potential businesses to come to the site, potentially. If they have an issue bringing business in, even if they do get the rezone approved, before any business is built on site, they'd like to have the ability to revert back to ag as their choice and not have to follow the stipulations in the DA. Number two, we would like to have RV storage as an allowed option, allowed use. RV storage is the lowest noise and lowest traffic. So why that was put in as a prohibited use, I don't understand. I think that would fit well with the site, and our applicants would like to have that as allowed use. As far as that goes with the landscape plan, we don't want, as the applicant does not want to have to build all that landscaping before any businesses come to site. We'd like to be able to have that landscaping plan put to use as businesses come to the site. So they would, if you develop a portion of the site or it's parceled out, that parcel would plant trees, and if we can't attract businesses here and our applicants still plant all these trees around this large 42-acre site, it's going to be a lot of maintenance and nothing. No reason to put that in until we actually have business on site. So we want to make sure that we can do that in the development agreement. As stated before, we've proven with the potential businesses coming in that newspaper article, Exhibit 44, industrial wages are typically higher for average than your standard wage. So just with the businesses that we have coming to site, we create 70 indirect jobs and 70 direct jobs and 32 indirect jobs, just with the tree service and the proposed cabinet company that would like to come to the site. And as I stated before, that would be about $375,000 per acre wage generation annually. Yeah, that 42 acres, based on that figure, would create $15,750,000 in wages annually at that site, for Canyon County, and that money gets spent within the county multiple times before it leaves. So, we have a lot of benefits to voting yes on this rezone. I understand the neighbors' concerns, and I feel that we've done a great job. Our applicants have done a great job working with the board and staff and the neighbors, and limiting a lot of uses, and make the site a fantastic project that would be beneficial for generations to come, and be an asset to the neighborhood and not a negative. For these reasons, I'd like to ask wholeheartedly for your guys' approval and to vote yes for our rezone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkie. Are there any questions? We will carry on with others testifying in favor. Justin Parker. Yes. Alan Mills. Mr. Mills, name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Alan Mills, Box 206, Milton, Idaho. I know this is a tough position for you, and been there myself, but the facts are what you have to deal with. And the facts are, this is not good farm ground. I think that's been unequivocally proved. Number 2 is a lot of talk about there's lots of other property available. That's not true. If nobody has come up with an example, they just say it's generally available. If you take Nampa's plan going north of the sugar factory, it's in class 1 and 2 soils, all their industrial uses. Coldwell, Sky Ranch, class 1 and 2 soils. We don't see many industrial sites that go on to class 4, 5, and 6. Everybody else is going on to the prime ground. And this isn't like just happened to show on the comp plan. This goes back several comp plans. We've either been wrong for an awful long time, or something went askew, because this isn't just this comp plan. If you go back and look, this has been designated for change for many, many years. Look, if you stand at the corner of Lower Pleasant and Weeks Road and look east, west, and south, or north, you see industrial use. It's a great demarcation line, because if you look to the south, there is none. It's agriculture and sporadic residential. That's a nice demarcation zone right there, and it's been planned that way for an awful long time. So we either, as a county, we're either saying we do want to attract industry and that variety, or we don't. We have to tell people that they can't count on the comp plan, or they can. I mean, it's just a kind of a tough situation. The reversion clause is very important, because even if the agreement goes as written, we don't want to get into a no man's land where it stays conditionally rezoned, and then the county has to take action to revert it back. And once the applicant to be able to at least say, we're pulling the plug on this and we're going to go back to agriculture, and not have to go through hoping the county will see it the same way. We want to be able to trigger that hearing with the applicant. And if question that nobody's ever answered for me is, if this was conditionally rezoned to M1 and then it reverted back, would the comp plan have to be changed to show agriculture? So, question that nobody has yet answered. What is the appropriate method? I'll sit for questions at that point.
Do you want me to answer that question with my own opinion?
Sure.
No. It is a plan and a guide for growth. It's not a guiding document with a specific, you must do this. And so the same is true when we have applied for it. It's just a guide. So even when the comp plan shows us agriculture and we've made those changes to the comp plan to allow for industrial or residential growth, it's just a guide. And so I think that we all need to realize that it's a guide, but it's not, state statute is very clear. It is not something that we strictly follow, and it can't be used like an ordinance. So.
I agree with the ordinance part, and I hardly agree with that because too many jurisdictions are reading the comp plans as ordinances. But I still have yet to see an example of not having the comp plan changed when a rezone takes place, if it doesn't show for that desired rezone. So it would be the first.
Yeah. Thanks, Alan. Any questions for Mr. Mills? All right, you're off the hot seat.
All right,
thank you. Are you ready, Justin? You're passed?
Yeah.
Okay. Lowell Fritz.
How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Name and address for the record before we start your time.
Lowell Fritz, P.O. Box 426, Milton, Idaho, 83614. So as we all have heard with this property, we obviously need more industrial property for people to do business on. But from reading these letters, just my concern that I see in these letters are, I see that the neighbors around this property have a problem with that steel company. And I don't disagree that there might be a problem with the noise that they're having, and I don't disagree with that it's an inconvenience, but we are not trying to come in and create that same problem that you already have. I guess just trying to state that as coming in there with businesses and whoever may come in, to hopefully work together, and we're not going to be able to change the fact that you have what's there. You have the noise that's there from that steel plant. We can't go back and change that. It's there. And so I see that a lot of the concerns on what we're doing is based on we're getting penalized from the steel plant. And so decisions made, I don't feel like it's fair to make that decision because so many people are unhappy with that steel plant. We can't do nothing about that. That noise is there. And with the noise ordinance on us, we can try to be less noisy than that steel plant. We can be. But with the penalty of stating you can only have this much noise and stuff, no matter what we do, we're not going to get rid of that noise that's there. And I'm sorry that noise is there. I'm sorry that it bothers you and has affected your life this much to where it is a problem that you don't want to see growth and that people, are afraid to let things grow because of that. And I'm sorry that it affects them that much. But we hope to be good neighbors and hope not to affect near like that is affecting them. And so with that being said, try not to penalize us or make your decision because of unhappy neighbors of something that's already there that we can't change, no matter what. It's not going to go away, it doesn't sound like, from that steel plant. So with that being said, I just hope that you guys make the right decision for more growth to come in there because we need it. We need that. And I don't know, we're definitely not trying to come in and be bad neighbors. So don't look at Justin or I coming in trying to be a bad neighbor to you, because we're not. It's just perfect ground for industrial, and that's how we've seen it. That's why we're trying our best to make it become that. So nothing we can do to change what's already there. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. There's no one else that would like to testify in favor. We'll move on to testimony in opposition. Mr. I was there an appointed person that was going to speak as a representative for the opposition? Okay, that being said, we will jump in with Teresa DeMaro. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I missed the last meeting, so had surgery, couldn't be here.
Name and address for the record.
Teresa Tomorrow, 17118 Upper Pleasant Ridge Road. I'm going to speak on,
If you can just pull that towards you and then just speak right in.
better.
Yep.
I'm going to speak on facts. I don't have the time to do the presentation because I don't get the time that they have. I spoke on a Zoom meeting. My camera wasn't working to show you. I'm a certified crane operator. I'm a certified forklift operator. I'm certified by OSHA to do hazmat cleanups, and I'm certified on proper equipment to use for cleanup. As you can see on the map, the irrigation that goes through there that goes to other properties, and the river, the creek that also runs along the edge of the property. This is not about noise from the steel plant. This is about passing on toxic waste to other agricultural properties around there. Now they want to have a RV storage, all that wastewater from RVs, a cabinet shop. I can't even begin to tell you the toxic materials on the cabinet shop. And their soil plant, it's half of it, maybe. If Middleton, the mayor wants it so bad there, go to Middleton. You're going to destroy the agricultural area. I mean, if you want, I can submit a report on how little bit of toxic a hydraulic hose breaking. That is so toxic, I don't have enough time to tell you. This is a toxic nightmare. And they want to just be able to come in here and go, oh, we don't want to be bad neighbors. It's not about that. This is about the lifestyle of people that live here and the farming that we produce that go to other people that could defeat. And the infrastructure, who's going to maintain the roads? Who's going to maintain the noise level? Nobody. It's just going to be on our word, we're going to do this. I don't think that's appropriate. I'm speaking on facts. Because I'm not close enough to be considered a neighbor. I'm here because I know the toxic reality of what they want to put in there.
Thank you. Any additional testimony?
I'm sorry?
Are you any additional, or are you that complete?
I don't want to, you guys heard me on the Zoom call. Yep. I had more to put on, but my camera wasn't working, so I cannot produce my documentation. That I am educated in these matters, and I don't want to keep dragging it on and repeating what I've said. I think you know.
Thank you, Teresa.
My position.
Any questions for Teresa? Did I pronounce your last name right, Tomorrow?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Pure luck. Okay, we appreciate your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person signed up is Jake Fillmore. Name and address for the record.
Jake Fillmore, 18954 Lower Pleasant Ridge Road, Caldwell. Some of these, I've just been writing some stuff down. It may not be in complete order, but they talk about how we're lacking all kinds of industrial property, but we're lacking all kinds of property in general because you can't even find property for housing or anything. So I don't think it's fair to say it's just for industrial. It's for all kinds of property. I mean, good Lord ain't making any more property. So, and then Mr. Mills talked about how you look in any direction you can see industrial. Well, if you look right around the property itself, there's no industrial. Yeah, the steel plant, but I mean, the borders of all sides of the property are not any of it industrial. They talk about the property and how poor a piece of property it is. I'd like to own it. I'd like to farm it. McIntyre's who owned it before, farmed it well, and got some fantastic hay off. But then they talk about how the wages that the property produces. But if that's all that planning and zoning cares about is the wages, then we don't have a prayer in opposition. Because yeah, you can say all kinds of stuff about how the industrial can make, a lot more money. Yeah, but the problem is we have a way of life around them, around that property. And we don't want that to change. And so the decisions that you guys make, they don't typically get reversed. I don't know if they ever do. Like the steel plant being 24 hours a day. We just don't want to see that kind of stuff happening around us anymore. It was a huge mistake that happened. And to my knowledge, it can't be reversed. And so we're trying to, you're putting some restrictions on this property. One of the things that you said last time that came to mind was Mrs. Van Beek said something about shortening the days of use. And then Commissioner Smith said, well, we farm 7 days a week, but I don't think that's a fair statement because it's not the same. Yeah, you might have a farm there, you might have a crop there, but you're not in the field every day. So, anyway, you can do with whatever you want with that, but I just don't think that was fair to say because, I mean, if you have a crop that you plant, you're in there for plant, you work the ground, you plant it, and then you harvest it. So.
Miss anything?
That's it.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Fillmore. Commissioner Van Beek.
Thank you. You are right on the property line adjacent to west of it. So there's a 0 foot. It's just, there's a border right there and you're on it.
Yeah, pencil.
And what's your proximity to Gale Manufacturing?
We are south of it, a little bit southwest of it. Actually, of their property, we're straight south of it, but the building itself southwest.
Okay.
But where they do all the noisy stuff is pretty much right south of us. And it's less than 600 feet, I'm assuming. I don't know the exact measurement. The reason I say that is whenever I want to put a shop a little bit closer to a border, I have to send them a letter. And I guess you have to send a letter if they're within 600.
And you're saying south, but isn't it north of your property? So Highway 19, it's out there building on the corner of Reversion.
They are north of us. Did I say south? I'm south of them. Sorry.
Yes, okay. And so, but their building structure is on the corner, but they actually, I was out there not for this property, but for a different purpose, but they have those steel beams stacked almost directly north of your property.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And that's where they do that.
Yeah. So I understand that they want to be, they say they want to be good neighbors, but that's why I'm saying, you know, you make a decision, you can't reverse it. And so I'm sure the intentions are good, but
one more question.
that's not what we want there.
Okay. There's a piece of ground that is in between Gale Manufacturing and this parcel, and
you can see it right there. It's up at the top section.
And is that still being farmed?
Yes.
And who owns that property?
I'm not sure their name.
Says Tracy on it, and then we're referring to Exhibit 45, right?
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Okay, and Jake, I know you've done hobby farming and you've been in agriculture, but has mint been grown on this piece of property prior?
Currently it is, yes.
Okay, so it's currently in mint production?
Yeah.
Okay, and just for the record, for the bit that I know, mint requires higher inputs. It takes,
Pardon me?
mint requires higher inputs. It's a higher dollar crop, and it requires good soil to do that. That is a true statement. So,
I can't say anything to that. I don't know how good a soil it takes. We've had mint growing in our flower beds before. You can't hardly kill it, so I don't know how to soil it takes.
okay, so we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next person signed up is Lynn Whittaker. Good morning. Name and address for the record.
Lynn Whittaker, 19720 Malt Road, Pueblo.
Thank you.
You ready?
Yep.
Well, first of all, about marginal farm ground. What Jake just said, it takes really good ground to grow a top mint crop. I've seen that the field used to be, had some alkali years ago, drainage system, perforated pipes put in to drain the water out. Now it grows mint there well. They put a pivot on it, which drives any alkali down. Ground, in my opinion, is getting better all the time. These soil maps, I've been a farmer for 50 years. My family there for 140 years. I've seen everything around. And anyway, the right to work, to farm we have in Canyon County comes down to, we have the right to work at night, yes, but as nobody talks about our spray program, that when we get businesses around us, and there's going to be 75 people, 75 cars, the spray planes have already informed me from another instance of commissioners a few years ago. They testified that they would not fly my fields. And we grow high dollar crops like onions, hybrid sweet corn seed. And they always fly north and south because there was only one house they had to fly over. They avoided the houses to the east. Now we've got businesses to the north. They probably will not spray. There's times we have to have a spray plane in order to save our crops. Fumigation is another thing for onions. We fumigate with chlorpyrifos for pink root in onions. And if we can't do that, we can't grow onions. That's all there is to it. And if there's one complaint for fumigating, the state ag department will be out. They will shut Simplots who we use. They will shut them down. And they do an investigation. So if we fumigate, they try to seal it. Sometimes the ground conditions not be 100% what they want, but it's within the limits. So there's always a little bit of escape and smell from chlorpyrifos, and it's toxic. And so here you are dealing with how many people across from you, and it only takes one person that is against spraying, and we're shut down. I don't know if I have much more to say other than I feel like if this goes through that we as farmers are discriminated against, well, we've been farming there forever. I have. And my son, 39 years old, he basically farms that ground right there, but we have 675 acres right within the vicinity. And so once this happens, and maybe you get another application for somebody wants to sell off another piece of ground, it just comes right down to boom, 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 we're losing our ability to farm. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Whittaker. At the last hearing, we did speak about the impacts of development on the aerial spraying. And I think you were not available at the last hearing. So I would love, you have been a farmer, I would consider you a professional on this, which is why I'm asking you. We talked about setting a 100-foot setback for all structures from the property boundaries in an effort to help still allow the farming operations to not have any impacts. Does that 100-foot setback help you, or does it not mean anything?
It's very little. What's 100 foot when you have a drift from a field that's been fumigated? You know, we don't want that, of course, but it can happen. And with it, you know, we've had good neighbors that haven't complained very much. Once in a while, but it's just the wrong. I mean, it's going to interfere with our crop history of growing high-value crops, high-dollar crops. And onions is one of the main crops we grow. It's high risk, but it can make money if you hit it right.
Have you ever farmed this property before?
I haven't, but we farmed all around it. And it wasn't, I mean, I didn't want to buy anyone around, that's why I didn't do it. But like I said, once the pivot was put on and the perforated pipe to get rid of the salts, I mean, you don't grow mint on ground that has alkali. It just doesn't happen. I mean, Jake had it in his garden, but I never, I know of,
He doesn't have alcohol license.
evidently not, but,
Commissioner Van Beek, did you have a question?
I did have a question, thank you. Where are you in proximity to this?
I'm on Walt Road, a half a mile east.
Okay, so a half mile east, so, and you said you have 675 acres?
That's my son and I together farming.
Okay, and so...
I own 335.
Okay, and so I asked this question in the last hearing, and the person that was farming that ground did not do aerial fly-ons. We have farm ground, we have done aerial fly-ons, and I can attest that we had a rust product on a wheat crop that the only way to let me take that crop was with a fly-on.
That's right.
Yes, and so I'm wanting you to explain that when you do a fly-on, it is necessary for certain crops, that you have flaggers and you have people at the ends of those fields. You have traffic or...
They don't. The aerial applicators all have GPS anymore. There's no flaggers that can be...
Okay, so what do you... I know you have wind conditions for drift and things like that, and if you're a half mile east, the western border of your property is a half mile east. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and so what do you suppose the drift, would they be able to smell this?
No, what we're talking is the ground. My son farms directly across More Pleasant Ridge.
Okay.
Right on the other side of this property.
Okay.
And growing onions, he does have a self-propelled sprayer, but when onions get large, the leaves in the fall or late summer, we don't want to run over them and destroy the leaves because it opens it up for infection and contamination anyway, and disease. And so we have to have an aerial applicator come in one time at least. And other crops such as we grow turnip seed, radish seed, daikon radish seed. And daikon radish seed, if you get aphid in it, you only have a few days to get it sprayed, and it has to be by a plane because it gets up this tall, and or they'll destroy your crop that quick. If you have to be on top of it, you're in real trouble.
So you're a half mile east, but your son is directly across the road. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, there's 240 acres that he farms directly a half a mile west on More Pleasant.
Okay, and I appreciate your testimony. And would you say, I guess I'm just asking on your 12 acre application, you've indicated it's toxic, and you use the very best kind of sign the fields and keep people out, but...
Well, yes, but still, anytime you have a drift people or a smell, people get upset, but it's going to kill them. We have this attitude anymore. And we work with it all the time. It doesn't seem to hurt us, but we have people moving in from out of state that are very...
And I appreciate your testimony. Farming, I appreciate your testimony. Farming is an underrated profession.
I just hope the commission will take into consideration this is our life, not just a hobby. I do it because I love it too. But it's, we produce every year, we produce good crops on all this ground. And all the seed crops we grow from Canyon County ships all over the world. It's amazing that if you ever, maybe you all know about that. Probably.
Thank you. I'm married to someone who's passionate for agriculture, so I appreciate your testimony.
Commissioner White?
Teresa, and I apologize for calling you by your first name. Oh, there. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Teresa mentioned the water that runs down through there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have access to that at any place, and have you noticed any issues with any contamination or anything like that?
No, because we don't spray over the water.
Okay.
It's a pipeline that runs through his farm and goes to this property, and then there's a riser there to pivot to hook onto. There's also a pipeline that goes to that drain ditch for the wastewater.
Okay. So that it doesn't run across your son's property or anything like that. It's over too far.
The pipeline goes through the property, yes.
Oh, it does?
Yes.
Okay.
To irrigate that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whittaker. Next person we have is Marnie Fillmore. You'd like to offer testimony? Or you support what was already said?
Support what was already said.
Okay. Do it. Yep. Name and address for the record.
Marnie Gilmore, 18954 Lower Pleasant Ridge Road, Caldwell, Idaho, 83605. So based off of what, 836, what did I say? 07, sorry. You can tell my age. He mentioned 75 cars for one business. If that's 1 acre, we're looking, 1 acre businesses, we're looking at, based on the information that was given, 2,150 cars if you're doing 1 acre businesses at 75 people per business. That's a lot of cars for that amount of property, which I think needs to be looked at as the big picture of potential usage of coming and going for that. With the aerial spraying or that type of thing, I think one of the points being the more people that we have coming in here, the more people we have complaining about what is actually going on in our area. With airplanes, I don't remember seeing, and you might check, the height of buildings on the property. Was that mentioned in the restriction? And it's something that I would question with what happens in our area with the aerial sprays and that type of thing. And that was something I know was mentioned before in conversation, but not on what I just heard when we started this. And it would be something to consider because, you know, something like Simplot or even the manufacturing plant just to the north of us is quite big and could obstruct what happens with the property just to the south of our subject property. Just a couple of questions that I would have to.
Thank you.
And just so we're clear.
You can't talk off the.
Right here, across the road.
Okay, thank you. So just for the record, accessory structures and commercial industrial structures in an M1 zone can have a maximum height of 75 feet. In the agricultural zone, that height is set 35 feet. So it's a 40-foot difference.
It is a big difference. And if we're switching that zoning within the agriculture, it just seems like it should be taken into consideration if you guys are happy that this goes forward, which of course I am not, but if it does, it's something to consider. And I think that you guys are aware of this, but just within the last 2 weeks, we had a major accident on the corner here of Wheats and Lower Pleasant, and it was significant. And we don't even have businesses at this corner to facilitate more of that happening. So.
Thank you. Okay. All right, any questions? Thanks. Next person that I will call upon is Sandra Kirshner.
Can I ask a little bit of a favor? Yes. My identical twin sister is supposed to be here and wanted to speak, but she's kind of in the hospital when she's with her husband. So my speech will probably go about 2 minutes over time. Is that permissible under these conditions? I put her name down there.
Oh, for Sonia Martin.
Yeah, that's my identical twin sister.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and allow you to read that in, but we'll need a copy of it to submit it into the record.
Can you have a copy?
We can make a copy of it.
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
And that will be Exhibit 47. We'll have you start yours. You'll need to list your name and your address for the record.
My name is Sandra Kirshner, and my address is 18969 Upper Pleasant Street, Caldwell.
Thank you. Yep.
My name is Sandra Kirshner. I live on 1 acres on the south side of Upper Pleasant Ridge Road and the eastern side of Chicken Dinner. This is part of a 20-acre farm I grew up on with my sister and brothers. My mother grew up on it too. The farm has over time been subdivided. The field on its southern side is owned by a farmer who lives in our area, Brian Leary, and one whose family has been farmers here for several generations. On the eastern side, the Gibbons live with their children and grandchildren. They have lawns, gardens, a trail, and pastures for their horses. Next to them, my sister-in-law, Sharon Knight, lives. Her and my brother Rick, who passed away in January, raised children there. It has beautiful lawns and gardens. Next to their place, the Dodgers recently moved in their 6 grandchildren. They are putting in new lawns, gardens, and pastures. We live next to them. Our younger son, who's engaged to be married, is living with us. They are planning to put in more gardens and an orchard. A lot of the farms in this community have been subdivided. New homes put up on them for families to live in. Because this is an agricultural zone, there are strict rules about subdividing, about how many homes can be put up on each property. At the last meeting here, we were told how hard it is for people who are not wealthy to find property already zoned for light industry that they can't afford. That this property is cheap, so it should be rezoned for them. This came across to me as being a put down of everyone in this community that believes that that land would be a good place to have a garden again, to have a house again, a home with people living in it that would be good neighbors, people who would become an active part of the community. When the land near the railroad tracks and Simplot Boulevard was rezoned for light industry, it was land that really was not good for farming, land that had no houses on it or near it. It was easy access to the train tracks and the boulevard, so the businesses moving in would not create problems on the roads in our community. Several businesses did move in, each one on its own property. Some other company later on wanted to put an alcohol plant in the area next to that area, one that would have to have an entrance on Lower Pleasant Ridge Road, not far from where L&J wanted to put in a business complex. The commissioners turned them down. I believe the commissioners giving in to L&J is just the first step in turning almost all of that part of our community, almost all of the land from Lower Pleasant Ridge Road to the boulevard, into a light industrial area. I would like to know how many small businesses with their own buildings are you going to permit that company to have on this property? I also would like to know if any changes are going to be made in regulations so people living in this community can have at least one more home on their property for their families to live in, one more than is currently permitted, or are these small businesses owned by outsiders considered more value than those of us who live in the community or want to live in it? Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Kirschner?
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sandra, can I get a copy of it?
The next person signed up to testify is Richard Gibbon.
Richard Gibbon, 18879 up at Pleasant Ridge Road.
Thank you.
The things that I want to bring up, I appreciate Alan's comment about needing more industry and property in our area, and that possibly we've been doing something wrong for a long, long time. And I think that the evidence is pretty clear on the property that has been named industrial, looking west from Centennial Boulevard, where you come to the intersection between Simplot Boulevard and Centennial. The heavy trucks now that are running through there, there's been farm trucks running through there for lots of years. And the trucks have gotten bigger, haul more, and yet they're not any comparison to the gravel trucks and the other trucks that are carrying 100 tons, 120 tons of materials up and down that road. The Centennial intersection there was just repaired a few years ago, and it's already got a ditch in it that small cars can't get into the right-hand lane to turn left. They've got to be in the left-hand lane. And if you look down from Centennial Boulevard, when you cross over Indian Creek, open water, you can see the smokestacks that run all the way over to Greenway. And there's
I'm sure that there's an environmental impact statement that shows that we can have all of those industrial areas along the live water, the only live water that we have on this side from the Boise, other than the drainage, the live water that runs through the property I was talking about, which runs into Indian Creek, which runs into the Boise. I haven't seen an industrial impact statement for the environmental impact that's going to be talked about and used for the next number of years. But Canyon County has been very, very restricted in their ability to plan for these things before they come in. So we've got the steel mill. I'm happy to have the business here. The problem is you can't, there's a railroad track in Simplot Boulevard that they have to pull out on, and those trucks can only turn right. If they're there early in the morning or later in the afternoon, they cannot make a left-hand turn to go towards the Greenway. The only access that they have to the interstate is going down Simplot Boulevard into the business area of Caldwell, and then turn to the only exit that's in that whole area to go onto the on-ramp. At the same time, the people are coming from Boise, from Eagle, from every place to the east of us, and those trucks are trying to merge with traffic. I came through Caldwell in 1970, 1971 when they put the 10th Street overpass in, and Canyon County has not improved the ability, Canyon County hasn't improved the ability of traffic to go from Caldwell to Boise in 40 years. And so I think that the Canyon County Commissioners need to take a look at the infrastructure before they bring in another 125 cars or another 3,000 cars or whatever we're going to do as far as industrial planning. We need the business here. But let's do it in a rational way, and let's not do it on farmland. If we look out here, we see landlocked property that's just east of Caldwell that's been landlocked for 40, 50 years. And you look west of Caldwell, and you can see Sand Hollow. There's places where we can build access to the interstate without having to go through home subdivisions and other industrial plants. So I'm hoping that you folks will take a look at this and realize that there's a lot better uses for this piece of property than an industrial stalemate that's going to increase traffic going across a used railroad onto the only access that we have to the interstate. The other access is a laughing stock in the whole state, Highway 55. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to wait for questions if there's any? Do you have any questions? Okay, you're good. Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. All right, Joyce Greenfield.
Good morning. Joyce Greenfield, 17585 Lower Pleasant Ridge Road. My biggest, well, not my biggest concern, but one really big concern that I have is that we live on that stretch of road between the Wagner, the end of Logan, and the intersection of Lower Pleasant Ridge. And I don't know if you've ever traveled that road, but it is. The first thing you do is you start 4 times, and then you start down Lower Pleasant, and then you curve and you curve and you curve and you curve till you get there. And when we first moved there 43 years ago, the road wasn't even paved. It was literally a gravel cow path, which eventually was covered with asphalt, but really nothing else was done to the road to improve it. And so over the years, we've seen a lot of stuff happen on that narrow little windy road. And we used to, a car to go by used to be an event, and now it's just pretty steady traffic. We've pulled a lot of people out of the field because they've come around the curve too fast and overcorrected and ended up off the road. I submitted a picture last time in an email where we had a car upside down at the bottom of our driveway where a guy came straight ways were dry, and then he came around the curve, which was icy, and lost control and flipped his car. And he was coming, as it turns out, from a job over on Highway 19. He was headed to lunch. So when the steel factory went in, we noticed pickup traffic increase. I just fear for those of us who live and farm on the road and those who drive that road. It's just not safe for heavy traffic. The other point I want to make is that we have farm, part of which is on the ridge and part of which is below the ridge, therefore the name. The lower ground is the same, it's on the same plane as the ground in question. And we've grown all kinds of crops on it. It's been very productive, that ground. Also on Farmway Road, on both sides of the road, Simplot has huge fields of farm ground that are very productive as well. So the notion that it's not good ground, I would say it's not as good and versatile as some other ground, but it's very productive. It'll be very productive ground. It shouldn't be discounted because of that. I sympathize with people looking for a place for industry. I think industry is good. I just don't think it's going to make the world a better place if it occurs at the intersection of Lower Pleasant Road and Beach Road. Thank you.
That's great, next person is Christy Phelan. Phelan or Ballin? Fallon? I don't know, which one is it?
Yes, can you hear me okay? It's Christy Fallon, 17906 Dana Road, although I don't know, 7. I think there's been a lot of awesome points that have been brought up today, and a lot of it where we want to think about what's the long-range plan. We want to look at what's the best for our community, and I think that's where we need to be. So if we look at what's the best in the long range, for me, I work in agriculture, and I think it's really imperative that we make sure that we preserve our agricultural land and that farming heritage that we have. If we don't preserve the farmland and that lifestyle that we can do, then we know we're not having that for generations to come. And it's not only is it the money that comes from that, but it's also, overall what they can be able to share and with their families and have that they can pass on to the next generation. So, I agree with what has been put forward before. We need to think about where we can do things in the best way, but let's not limit the agricultural production in that area, and let's make sure that the people that were already there have the lifestyle that they want in the agriculture that they can have. And let's think about where we can have the industry in the spot with the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one would be Eric Fallon. Mr. Fallon, thank you.
So, yeah, Eric Fallon, 17906 Boehner Road, Caldwell, Idaho. All I want to say basically is once farmland is taken out and used for something else, it's very unlikely that it's ever going to be reclaimed back to ag. So if it goes from ag to something else, it's never coming back. And so it'd be too expensive. There wouldn't be enough money there to invest in that to put it back to farmland. There's only so much property as the industrial people say. I mean, everything is limited. Right now, in the past, it was farmland, and it's in an area where it's farming all around it. So I just want to state that we do want to preserve what we have there that's already surrounded by farmland. And it was at one time zoned until recently, 2020, with the new comp plan. South of Highway 19 was farmland, was ag. And one thing they mentioned earlier too about the best use of the land by the USDA, class 6 soils or whatever, only limited to maybe pasture lands or something, well, that's ag land too. And, if there's people all around on your way to notice even that, graze cattle, and that's ag as well. So it's part of the lifestyle of what we're used to in this area. And Christy and I moved to Boehner Road, in 14, and we moved there because we like farming, and we like the area all around us. We like seeing the crops grow around us, and we're raising hay and animals on our property as well. So, if we wanted to live in an industrial area, then we would have. And so, when people change the way things were after the fact, it's not really fair to the people. And we've been there a short time compared to the others that have spoken. So I just want to warn about encroachment.
Okay, thank you. So, Michelle, we've asked that you read a statement for Jennifer Buskirk. Are you prepared for that? Okay, you're up. Michelle Van List, we will swear you in since we haven't done that yet.
Michelle Van List, do you swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So help you God. Okay.
And then just for the record, did Jennifer already send in her letter? Okay, is that an exhibit already?
The late exhibit number 43.
Okay.
She asked me to read that.
I'll let you guys weigh in on that. I know that I have read it already, and so it would be considered repetitive testimony, and I'm sorry I just swore you in, but I'll leave it up to you guys.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Van Beek?
Jennifer is participating by WebEx. I do not know her, but I know that she submitted not only the letter, but pictures of the accident. So I think Mrs. Van List, out of respect for her, is trying to help with that process. I would be in favor.
I'm okay with it too. Read fast.
She had a hard time writing this. She's still suffering a concussion. Canyon County Commissioners, I am writing to you again in strong opposition of rezoning this agricultural field to industrial, even with the revisions. Do you want my address? Michelle Van List. I am also Shelley Van List, 18641 Chicken Road, Caldwell, Idaho, 82607.
Thank you.
Okay. Monday, March 29th, 2021, I was driving my Suburban North on Wheats towards Highway 19 to pick up my children from school. At the intersection of Wheats and Lower Pleasant Ridge Road, I was T-boned on the front driver's side by an eastbound car that failed to stop at the stop sign. This is a resident who lives in the area and knows there is a stop sign at this intersection. The car was going fast enough to push us into the tower pole at the intersection, and my Suburban flipped over. I have attached photos of the accident. Miraculously, the other driver was walking around at the scene with a bloody nose, and I was able to free myself of my seatbelt and crawl out of the Suburban with bruises and soreness. I am very thankful my children were not in the vehicle with me at the time. I have had a very short couple weeks with physical therapy ahead. Apologies for any grammatical errors in this letter. This is difficult to do with a mild concussion. From 2020 Comprehensive Plan, government regulations, government may properly regulate the limit use of private property based upon its authority and responsibility to, number one, protect public health, safety, and welfare. I thought it important to write to you as I am very concerned with the safety of this intersection. It is already dangerous. I am very concerned that with increase in industrial traffic at this intersection, it will be even more dangerous. Please don't put our neighborhood and its residents at greater risk. Adding trees along the perimeter does not minimize adverse impact on adjacent properties. If anything, reduced visibility at these high-speed intersections increases danger. Also from 2020 Comprehensive Plan, number 11, property owners shall not use their property in a manner that negatively impacts upon the surrounding neighbors or neighborhoods. 13, Canyon County will take appropriate measures to enforce all nuisance ordinances to protect quality of life and private property rights. Community design component, number 2, encourage development of self-sustaining communities that maintain the rural lifestyle and good quality of life of the county. Number 3, encourage development design that accommodates topography and promotes conservation of agricultural land.
Agriculture. Goals. Number 1, acknowledge, support, and preserve the essential role of agriculture in Kansas County. Policies. Number 1, preserve agricultural lands and zoning classification. Please maintain our rural lifestyle and good quality of life. I'm very concerned that the tree service already has issues of nuisance at its current location. Moving the company to a property surrounded by homes would have a negative impact on the neighborhood. I can guarantee if allowed to move, the tree service will continue to get many more. From 2 miles away at my home, I can hear metal being dropped and banged at the steel industry on weeks. This neighborhood already has to hear and see lights of the steel plant. Please do not add to it with more very noisy industry. Please conserve this agricultural land. There are still a lot of empty fields along Highway 19 could be turned into industrial that is not surrounded by homes. They would disrupt no one there. I understand this field is on the map with possible future plans to be zoned industrial, but is it necessary at this time? Is there no other property better suited for them to go to that would not negatively impact this many residents? If most of the other fields were full of industry and running out of space or options, I might understand the deliberation of rezoning, but it's not. An industrial rezoning is not more appropriate than the current agricultural. This is a neighborhood of homes in a predominantly agricultural area. Yes, rezoning would negatively affect the character of this area. Sincerely, Jennifer and Jacob Buskirk, 18754 Boehner Road, Colon, Idaho.
Thank you, Shelley.
I tried fast.
Yep, great. Perfect. All right, that completes the, those that have signed up.
No, there's one more.
Oh yeah, Ryan, you are on there. Ryan, you are up. I'm sorry that I missed you. Then I got 2 online. Name and address.
Good morning, my name is Ryan Whittaker. I live at 18291 Upper Pleasant Ridge Road, Caldwell, 83607. Being the last person to speak, everyone has pretty much said everything there is to say. I just wanted to reiterate that Lynn is my dad, and I'm the one who farms directly across from property in question. And I just wanted to reiterate that it is a very highly productive farmland. Thank you for bringing that up. I was going to ask you. If you look directly across from the property, there's behind the soil report there, but that sort of a yellow U shape there, that would be the same classification of soil as the lower portion, the north portion of the property in question. That field there, I had my second highest onion yield on that field 2 years ago. That's how productive that is. Onions are a very labor intensive, capital intensive, very intensive crop, and it's a very high dollar crop. So I can attest to its high production value. And another thing, just to reiterate, the amount of farm equipment that moves through this area. It's not just the field in the immediate area. There's obviously a huge amount of farmland to the south, and there's a lot of tractors and large equipment that comes through that area. And bring in more truck traffic, delivery trucks, any businesses on this property, employees. It creates more conflict. And so bringing more traffic such as that into this area is detrimental. And if you've ever driven a large piece of equipment down the road and you have people that just don't want to give way, let's say, it creates a hazard. And it's not something we want to have problems with. As well as I just wanted to point out the very, very narrow bridge crossing that is right at the the drain that runs on the north end of the property there. It's a very, very narrow bridge. And like everybody said, it's not an area that is suited for that kind of extra traffic to come in there. It's one thing to keep it down on the highway, a 4-lane highway with a turn lane. And, that's where light industrial needs to be for these, for any increased traffic. The simple highway can handle that. Our small country roads cannot.
Can you clarify for the record on this vicinity map shown on Exhibit 45 on the right, where Weeks Road and then the blue line for the creek, you're saying that bridge is narrow?
It's very narrow, yes. And they just put up new signs actually limiting the axle weight, which there's trucks that go through that, I'm pretty sure that violate that, but that's something else that have to do.
None of yours?
No.
None of mine either.
No, I mean, the steel plant, and that's something else that, you know, the bed plate plans are only that, they're only plans. When the steel plant went in, I think, you know, their proposal was that everything would be off of the highway or the, you know, the railroad track. A majority of the trucks that I see come out of there hauling oversized steel beams come up Weeks Road and directly across Upper Pleasant and Weeks, which is where I live, headed, I'm assuming, toward California to, you know, go through Phoenix. So they're headed toward Highway 55 down that way. I rarely see any of those trucks, you know, on Sunbelt Boulevard. So, and again, we know that, you know, people have good intentions for their businesses and being good neighbors. However, this is just not an appropriate place for light industrial.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner White.
What generation are you in farming this property?
This particular property isn't actually our family property. My dad farms our family property.
Okay.
What I farm is owned by a company called Farmland Reserve, and they're a very large corporation. And just like the name says, Farmland Reserve, they're...
Okay, that's good to know, but what generation are you to farm?
To farm, it goes back probably as far as you can look, because to a time when everyone, you know, more or less everyone was farming.
Okay.
You know, I actually live in my grandparents' house, which was part of the original homestead. That was my grandparents, and then my great-grandparents were also in that area, so I guess fourth generation.
And onions is okay. Do you export them?
I don't.
So yours are local?
We haul to storage in Apple Valley, which is right before you cross the river into Nissa, Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
That's where all of mine go.
Okay.
And then from there, once I drop them off, they can do what they want.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you
for your testimony.
Okay. Did I miss anyone else that is in person? Okay, we are going to move to online testimony. Candace, you have been unmuted, and you will have 3 minutes of non-repetitive testimony. We are really nearing the end of this. I would really encourage you to not have repetitive testimony, and please just state if you agree with prior testimony. And then please give us your address for the record.
My address is 18377 Chicken Dinner Road, 83607. And I agree with everything that has been stated in opposition of this plan. That's all I need to say.
Perfect.
I hate seeing the loss of more ag, and I've seen a lot, and I've only been here 20 years, and the changes I've seen have been monumental, and I'm very disappointed and upset about it. But that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, the next person will be Cassie Chadwick. You are now unmuted. Name and address for the record.
Cassie Chadwick, 18450 Lower Pleasant Ridge Road, Caldwell, Idaho, 83607. And I just want to say that I am in agreement with everybody who has spoke in opposition today. And that's all I have.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that completes testimony opposition. We will now move to rebuttal, and I would invite Mr. Wilkie back up. You will have 5 minutes of rebuttal testimony.
All right. I guess coming through or hearing all the testimony here, we'd like to state future sales on the property. We can do an act disclosure where all the potential buyers would have to sign that. So we could add that into the development agreement. that way we wouldn't have any protests, from any industrial users of any surrounding farming operations. A lot has been spoke of the aerial application from airplanes for farm use. That site does not lend well to aerial application. I highly doubt that they've done any aerial. There's power lines on the south and east boundary, and they don't fly that. So Jake and Fillmore spoke of the industrial being, they said the hay had been highly productive, and I've heard that from many of the opposed testimony. Again, the property to the south is highly productive farmland. Property to the north on our subject property, 85% of that is Class 6 and 3 soil, majority Class 6, which is not the best. And I've been farming my whole life, and I know what it takes to take a poor soil and make it productive, and yet input a lot of chemical fertilizers and all sorts of work to keep that soil to produce as good as possible. It's not like Class 1 where you have great production right out of the gate. You have to really build this Class 6 up just to make it produce. They're only creating $400 an acre annually with a lease. So this high dollar mint crop, all it's doing for our clients is a $400 annual lease return that expires this December. Next year, their rotation crop most likely would have been wheat or, it's a crop that doesn't produce near as much as mint. The production on that property is not very indicative. The onions, there's a lot of rock in there. Potatoes would be a great crop. It didn't have the rock, but that property has rock in the soil, so potatoes are out. You're kind of limited to wheat and hay, that kind of stuff. And again, the production just isn't there. Also, with the traffic, that traffic is most likely going to head north. There's no real incentive for a truck driver to drive through all the side roads to head towards Highway 55 when they can just turn around on Highway 19 and head west to go through Phoenix. Notice to hit Highway 95 to go to California. I would highly doubt that large loads of steel are getting through all the secondary roads. That just doesn't make sense from a truck driving standpoint. Driven from the site to Highway 55, and you have to make quite a few turns to get to Highway 55. That's not a straight shot by any means. Pretty much, I think we stated a really good case of why this property should be zoned industrial. That from a real estate perspective, as an agent, I consider that an industrial view of that site. It's not ag. You look north, and that's Ellen Mills that spoke of the view as industrial. When you look to the north, it's not ag. It's industrial out there. Your site is an industrial view. So, the ag themselves, with Class 1 soil, that's not where we want to put industrial. We want to put the industrial next to the current industrial use. And that's why we chose the site as well as the future outline map. That was a great plan by the county when they adopted it. So did Greenleaf. So now Greenleaf agrees with the industrial use as well as the county and that future map. And so that's why we chose the site. So people spoke of they need to find a better site. Well, I don't find one anywhere in Canyon County any better. I think this is an ideal site. The traffic flows well on Highway 19. It's easy access to the interstate. And it's 5 lanes. They've really done a fantastic job of building that corridor. So, again, for these reasons, we would appreciate a yes vote and discussion.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will say for the record, I do live in the area and we have a lot of aerial spraying. They spray incredibly close to my home. And they fly very low, and I'm always surprised they don't clip those power lines. But they are professionals, and it is a very highly applied area.
Yes, but our subject property isn't, I mean, it's very hard. They're very professional, but I think that would be property to fly with the power lines here on the phone.
You should see my property and they literally fly it.
Yeah.
But anyways, okay. All right, if there's no additional questions.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Testimony.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to close public testimony. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Public testimony is now closed. I'm going to backtrack since we had additional exhibits. Does anyone have any objections to any of the late exhibits before we enter them into the record?
No.
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
I don't have any objections either, so let the record show that they were entered. So,
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Van Beek?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we move forward, I did want to address if the commission decides to review the request by the applicant that just wants to provide some analysis on, if you do go with some of the changes that they're proposing, the development agreement, as stated, 2A has the list of prohibited uses. They're requesting that the main storage and RV storage be removed. That would be up to the board to allow that or not. 2C, the intent of that condition was for every use that comes in would have to be held under this condition. It wouldn't be just the owner at this time meeting all that. Is when that changes the use to whatever they're using it for, then this applies to that user. So staff is fine with revising it to reflect that this is the only time that they would need to do it at that time was if they do a plat and started to split it off, then we would want those some of those conditions to be met at the time of fire, but the rest of it's really at the time of building permit and our use. The one thing brought up is the stipulation that the applicant can revert back to ag at any point. Staff does not recommend that. This is similar to the stipulation they asked for regarding M1 zone surrounds, that they are no longer subject to this development agreement. At the end of the day, we're approving as rezoned to an M1. And there's ways to modify that development agreement through a process. In this case, if they don't want that anymore, they would have to come back to the rezone process to change it back to the ag zone because the underlying zone is still M1 at the end of the day.
Right, and there's nothing in state statute that would allow a reversion like that. So I think it's a moot point. Okay.
Thank you, Dan.
So based on the staff report, testimony, and exhibits we have received today, does the board have changes they would like to make to the recommended findings, conclusions, and order and conditions of approval as applicable? Let me start?
Sure.
Okay. So I've spent a lot of time considering the last hearing as well as listening to the testimony today. And when we make rezoning decisions, we have to consider the findings of fact and the conclusions of law. The zoning ordinance section 7607 6A has 5, 6, 7, 8 questions that we have to be able to answer in the affirmative for approval. Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed those 8 standards and they found reasons for denial. The board at the last hearing, there were 2 commissioners that reviewed those findings and found if it was heavily conditioned in the development agreement that we could find some positive findings for those. I think that state statute was crafted in a way that was very wise because it's a big decision to change from one zone to the next. And the Planning and Zoning Commission's decisions should be utilized and listened to. And if there's changes in that, having an opportunity for constituents to come back and talk is a big deal. I worked for the city of Caldwell and did the revitalization of downtown, and I started having opportunities to go and speak to people about how to affect change. The main thing that I tell people on the way to affect change is to speak up and to get involved and to be a part of the hearing process. This community has done that, and I think that although there was some emotion in some of the conversations, which we can't consider, I think that they've done a good job of identifying the impacts to agriculture. And if you go back to the conclusions of law, I think that we can make a finding that actually would support denial of this rezone. One thing that I think is really important to note, the comprehensive plan includes a map, which gets brought up a lot. The map shows this property as industrial, and there's also 92 pages of text. And when you read through the pages, specifically the agricultural component, some of those were noted earlier, but there's 3 policies in specific that this proposal does not support a comprehensive plan of an industrial zone. Specifically, it's to preserve agricultural land and zoning classification. So even in the comprehensive plan, it recognizes the difference between a zoning classification, which this zoning classification is agriculture. It talks about developing and implementing standards and procedures to ensure that development of agricultural land is compatible with agricultural uses in the area. And that number 3, we would protect agricultural operations and facilities from land use conflicts or undue interference created by existing and proposed commercial or residential, commercial, and industrial development. The main thing that I lose sleep over on this one is I have not typically been a bureaucratic person. I don't like conditions of approval. It could be from my bias from working in Development Services Office. The office does not have enough staff to enforce code enforcement. Many of the cases that have conditions of approval, there's just not a good opportunity for enforcement of those. And so when you have to look at the number of conditions that we ask staff to work with the developer to put on this case, for us to be able to find some type of peace in approving it, should have been an indication. And again, I'm grateful for a second opportunity to review this. So I will stop belaboring, and I would recommend that although the map is consistent with this, that the text is not consistent in the comprehensive plan, and the conditional rezone is not compatible with surrounding land uses because of the number of conditions that we would have to be able to enforce, and that the conditional rezone does negatively affect and that the uses allowed in that zone negatively affect the character of the area.
Thank you, Commissioner White. I just have to, just for 4.5 seconds, take issue with emotion, because I'm a very emotional, passionate person myself, and a lot of that, you're very passionate when you're talking about your land, your home, or your money, or most of all, your children. So, anyway, what I have not changed my mind with regard to this request, but there were some things that were said that it just really stuck out to me. I think it was Ryan that said the property he farms is a farm reserve company. Okay, and I saw that, but to hear you say that, that was something that was, took root with me, okay? I also heard that the site has mint, and I made mention of, that's probably my favorite. And it is a pivot that is put in there, and I'm not a farm girl. I mean, my grandparents had one. I got to spend 2 months every summer with them, but I'm not, so I don't know. But I think a pivot might be very spendy to put in something that is, you know about those, and then those other ones that have all the wheels on them and all that kind of stuff too. They just look like they would be, they're so intricate, and the way they work is fascinating. So that to me would make them worth their time and the price. I do appreciate, is it Mr. Lowell? Is that your first name or your last?
My first.
I'm sorry. I appreciate your testimony very much, though, because you recognize the concern of the people, and you recognize the steel plant that has been there, and how it's not been, I think it wasn't delivered. It wasn't delivered as it was presented. And so that sting and that burn is just a little bit there. And I really appreciate the fact that you acknowledged that, but made the point that you know that, and you really don't have the personal intent to just keep, hurting the people in that way, that sort of a thing. So thank you for putting that on the record. I appreciate that. One thing I'd heard, and I heard it from many, and it's in so many of the emails and stuff too, that it's always, and several times, it has been referred to as the community of Lower Pleasant and Upper Pleasant Road community. And that's a huge point for me to make too. It's not, you all have individual opinions and individual sites and homes and farms and land and that sort of thing, but yet you refer to yourselves as the community of Lower Pleasant Road and Upper Pleasant Road. And when you have a community, you want to have compatibility if there's expansion, and you don't, and we have farmland. I will say that in the, Mr. Wilkie, you're from the Press Tribune. I noted in there too, and Mr. Foltz, who is the Economic Development Director for Caldwell, and he is an upstanding, very cool guy, and he very much knows what he's doing. But he added, right at the end of one of those paragraphs, it says, Foltz added that Caldwell's planners don't want to intrude on agricultural land. And that's just, it says it very personally, that says it very nicely for me, that the planners don't want to do that. And I think there was another point made that, I think it was Mr. Gibbons, I'm not for sure, but you said that we need to anticipate growth and get maybe in front of it instead of, and I'm just using my interpretation, instead of always needing to chase it. So the infrastructure and different aspects of growth, the roads and the intersections, this was powerful to get the email of that, the pictures from that crash. That's very, very, very fortunate that people were not, that there wasn't a loss of life. So and I'm all for getting ahead of growth instead of constantly chasing after it by intersections that aren't. And another thing about, and I do have to make this statement because I kind of complain about this every day, Matt, and I'm sorry, but I live in the bowels of southeast Nampa, okay? And they closed 2 more roads and I'm trapped. The roads are closed every direction, everywhere you go, roads are closed. The land of orange cones has landed on us. And people, I would say, they are using that road across their weeks to get to over to 55 or something, because there are so many other, the arterials and minor, major, they're closed for either improvements to get in front of chasing the growth, we're now putting in roundabouts and we're doing lights and stuff like that. So it is, I'm finding places, I've lived here for 25, 26 years, and I'm finding routes to Caldwell that I did not ever know existed from southeast Nampa area. So I understand, and the traffic is, and I believe that that is a real worry for the people that live there and have their homes and their children and families there. So I think that land in and of itself, I think Mr. Wilkie stated that too. It's very hard to find almost any land right now and stuff. But I don't, to me, the compatibility issue here, still I will hold with I'm not in favor of this.
Madam Chair, Commissioner White, thank you for your comments. I wanted to start my deliberation process with one of the late exhibits that we received. It's from John and Patricia Warren. It's Exhibit 42. And there has been a lot of conversation referenced around the deal manufacturing. I did, as Commissioner White and Commissioner Smith, spend a lot of time looking at this, evaluating it, staying up later than I should have. But this was rezoned in 2002 to M1, and it wasn't developed until 2010 when they built that building. It was a full rezone, not a conditional rezone, and there were no conditions attached to it. And so with that piece of information now in an open meeting, what I can say is part of the conflict is that was not conditioned to mitigate for the surrounding properties there for residents for the farming community, which is truly unfortunate. This board did not have a piece in that discussion, but what I can say is that this board is interested in a well-vetted discussion with bringing forth information and researching what it is that's really in the best interest of our community. Then I want to reference Exhibit 43, which was submitted by Jennifer Buskirk. This is probably one of the most well-documented and demonstrates one of the best uses of the county's own comprehensive plan in building a defensible argument. That's what we're challenged to do every day, is to look at what are the guidelines that were given to find for the findings of facts and conclusions of law and order. We are a quasi-judicial body making decisions that have to stand up in the district court if delegated to that. So I find that her use of the comprehensive plan is very relevant, and she makes a number of good points, which has been put on the record by Mrs. Benza. So kudos to her in that. One of the things in the last hearing that we talked about were the hours of operation, and we tried to condition that in a way. Here's what I can say. I'm going to reference this again. I have more than 60 different gravel trucks coming up and down my road every day from 8 to 5. I generally do not have gravel trucks going up and down my road on the weekend, but this last weekend I did. And what my husband said was, if we had to be here during the time that we're working, this would really impact our way of life. And so it's out of fairness that where there's a reluctance, and I understand why, but a reluctance to limit the hours of operation to a normal 8 to 5 business operation. There was no limit on that. It was a 7-day-a-week. Some of that mitigation that has to happen in the transition zone has to take into account what's already there. And the testimony today, again, that we heard was there are century farming in some instances, generations of farming that deserve the same respect and consideration as other businesses wanting to coexist peacefully in that area. And so that, to me, I think from the testimony that I heard, and I did appreciate, and this Board of Commissioners did try to mitigate in a fair and a responsible way what would mitigate for the concerns that were brought forth and be fair to both parties. But that really came home to me this weekend, that with the approval of deal manufacturing and the disturbance that creates on a regular basis for us as much as a mile away, that's going to be problematic if we aren't able to mitigate that further. I want to put on record that my husband is a crop protection advisor and a distribution person for Simplot, which is a mile east of this property. So I hear all about the chemicals. I find it very fascinating. I understand. I appreciate the the testimony given here, by Mr. White, both his father and his son. The one thing I wanted to say is Simplot being an industrial user of that ground, they use that ground to grow crops, to disperse the wastewater that's from the manufacturing, the potato processing plant. So there's uptake of nutrients that's in that. It's still being farmed as an agricultural industrial use that's used in Simplot's ongoing agricultural operation. I wanted to reference specifically some of the testimony, a couple of points there that I found to be credible testimony, which is not that we didn't have that from every officer, but Mrs. Tomorrow indicated her certifications, and I thought providing credible testimony, especially now that the board has been asked to reconsider putting some of those things that we conditioned out back on the table. And RV Park, you would, I think, have to have some type of septic system there that would impact the groundwater. Her point is well taken on chemicals for cabinet shops, for hydraulic brakes, for things that happen. If you own equipment, it's going to happen. If you're a farmer, you understand that. So I appreciated that piece of testimony. Mr. Fillmore, I'm familiar with Mr. Fillmore. He used to be a neighbor of mine. Enjoyed him as a neighbor. But I think what I can say is that if we compare the value of farming, and what I'm hearing is $400 an acre potentially for onions. I'm not sure what that is. Okay, whatever that was. Yeah, it's not that high. It's higher than that. Okay. Thank you. Okay, we're going to get this straight. We're going to talk about the land lease price of that. And I've got that. But my point is this. When I married my husband, he was a dairy farmer. And we went to, because the margins are so tight in farming, we went to look at refinancing with an SBA loan officer. And he looked at our financial documents, and what he said was, he looked down, they looked at us, and he said, why would you do this? He said, your margins are single-digit margins. They're really small. He said, you should sell. That was about 25 years ago, and I can tell you right now, we're sitting on property that is very valuable. And what I can say is we haven't sold it because it's not only valuable, it's priceless for some people. And the Century Farm, a community, a way of life, what we're trying to mitigate. What I want to make sure that we understand is that in the growth of this valley, what commissioners are charged to do, and we are just people, we are charged to evaluate an enormous amount of information and where this county is going. And I want to include with my comments today an email that was submitted by Roger Bratt on April 13th, which in between the time that we had this hearing and then today, we've met with an agricultural community that includes a number of irrigation supply companies, Crookham Seed, a lot of different.
Can't introduce any new evidence at this point.
Then I'll just reference that there are guidelines in here that are outside of what was admitted for evidence in this, that the commission doesn't have a clear direction yet on exactly what that looks like. So I can say that we are in process. We are experiencing change on the Development Services Department with a new director, and the growth in the valley is unprecedented. We are trying to figure out how to put this puzzle of growth and agriculture together. Some of it, I think, is appropriate. Mr. Brown's comment that I'm farm ground, which I would not approve in the city of Caldwell for low-income co-development housing. I object, but I didn't get a say in that. I get a say in what happens in rural county development. So the next thing I want to say, Mr. Whiting, on your fumigation, your irrigation, fumigation, whatever irrigation you're doing, your point there was well taken that farmers, even though their profits may not equal what other industries bring, the sacrifice that's made to do that and the right to do that without interruption by either equipment or fumigating or whatever that looks like. Agriculture has to be respected if we're going to maintain it and have that going in the future. The protection of public health, safety, and welfare, that's a concern that Commissioner White has already addressed with the impact of the photos of Ms. Buskirk. 90 letters of opposition, so, that's significant when people speak. And then I wanted to I made an argument in the last hearing that the distance from the Weeks Road and Lower Pleasant Ridge intersection to Highway 19, and they said they couldn't gain a lot of speed turning left. I'm hearing testimony that the vehicles in fact turn right and go south. And I can tell you exactly why that would happen, because my husband working on Highway 19, it was probably 6 months ago, he came to work and a Simplot driver had pulled out to get a teacher heading to Homedale, and he was still on the road when my husband got there at 6:30 in the morning. It's dangerous. It's hard to cross or left, and so the easier path would be to go south. And we have continued to receive letters asking, what can we do about transportation? They don't tie that together. Commissioners don't hold jurisdiction over that, but where we do hold jurisdiction is looking at what's in the comprehensive plan and those factors for health, safety, and welfare. It's dangerous. My husband yesterday told me he has to cross Highway 19 on a forklift. And I guess I hadn't heard that before. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about adding more till we know what we want to do. I want to jump because I have to find something from our findings of fact and conclusions of law. I know I've taken a lot of time with this, but staff has provided a report that I want to look at that. So on property rights, number 8, promote orderly development that benefits the public good and protects the individual with minimum of conflict. With more than 80 letters of opposition and with people regularly showing up, this is not a decision with a minimum of conflict. Even with the conditions that we put on the development, there is still some level that both sides I'm hearing are not able to live with that. So this is a highly contested, and I find that in conflict there. Land use policy, commercial industrial policy number 2, encourage industrial development that minimizes adverse impacts on adjacent non-industrial land uses. We don't have directly adjacent non-industrial land uses. We have adjacent farm uses. Land use policy number 1, review all residential, commercial, industrial development proposals to determine the land use compatibility and impact that surround the area. I think that the chair covered that. Development agreements when appropriate. When I first started as commissioner, I was observing a land use decision that had more than 40 conditions of approval. And when we get to the 40 conditions of approval, it is a red flag that not the right time. We turned down another proposal in Southeast Tampa. It was an out-of-state buyer that wanted to put an RV park and a development, and what we said was not the right time. So while I understand the argument of Mr. Wells, he is an expert in land use development. I respect him greatly. This, at this time, is a hot one. There's a reason that planning and zoning couldn't do it, and there's a reason that commissioners are finding in this, given, even with the option B on considering surrounding land uses, there's 3/10 of a mile, half a mile. I was very intentional in asking the questions on how closely those properties are, and there's none that is as close as the gentleman I referenced that lives right across the street. He'll be greatly impacted by that. Were we conditioned with a landscape barrier, that's going to potentially provide site obstruction. Mr. Fillmore has no setback on that. There's nothing, because he's not an agricultural operation, he's a residential operation. Potentially a 0 setback, even though there's a landscape buffer, but maybe nothing to mitigate the impact of his farming there. So these properties that have been referenced, the greatest distance is 1 mile, and that's the Simplot. It continues to farm with life uses in this area. So even with everything in there, what I've heard on the opposition or the applicant wanting to come back, number 1, he does have an alternative route. He has a city that's growing in Middleton that's actively looking for industrial use and welcoming that business. At some point in time, I make the argument, I still believe, because it's out there, there is industrial out there. But where that line is supposed to be drawn, I've heard arguments on both sides, and I respect the arguments, but there's the way that our ordinance reads is that the commission is unable to find affirmation for all of the 8 conditions that have been laid out for looking at an approval, then it becomes a denial. I appreciate the time that Commissioner White and the Chair have taken to allow me to articulate my comments. I do not go into these lightly. I look at all of them, as I know the board does, and it was not without a lot of deliberation and thought for this, for both sides, that the board, at least, so I can speak for myself, has to move to a position of denial because of what came back from the applicant and the ongoing opposition that's provided a heavier weight. If we're going to weigh those balances in that scale, then the opposition is going to take precedence. My humble opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner White?
Are you ready? I would like to make a motion.
Yep.
I move that we deny this case, RZ 20200015, and direct staff to prepare revised findings of fact and conclusions of law to support our decision, and then bring them back
future date.
At a future date to the board.
Okay.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a motion by Commissioner White and a second by Commissioner Van Beek to deny this request and to direct staff to modify the FCOs to be considered at a different date. Prosecuting Attorney Wesley has joined us. Would you like us to state, read the reason for denial and if any action that we would recommend for future approval? Do we need to do that? Do we need to state that, or will that be included in the FCOs?
Madam Chair, Commissioner White, and that is required to be in the written finding. Dan and I have been taking notes as we've talked and making notes on how the findings will be changed. I think I heard enough that we could draft findings and change anything else.
The only thing that maybe I would specifically add to the record is something that would help me in this case is if there was an immediate connection to another industrial zone. That could make a difference so that it was incrementally transitioning in the zone. Okay, so there is a motion and a second. Any further deliberation? Dan?
Sorry to interrupt. For discussion with Mr. Wesley, this does not have to come back to a hearing item.
Right. Correct. Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes and this case is denied, and we will bring back FCOs for final signing. Sorry, guys. Thanks for attending.